Her ex laughed in a candlelit restaurant and called her fat, never noticing the way the lights trembled or the shadows leaned closer. If he had listened to the silence instead of his cruelty, he might have heard destiny breathing and the ancient heart awakening inside her. Hey everyone, so glad you're here today. It really means a lot. I'd love to know where you're watching from. So go ahead and drop your city, state, or country in the chat. And if you're watching live or catching this later, say hi anyway. Can't wait to connect with all of you. Lila Mae Hawthorne had always believed love should feel like coming home, not like standing barefoot on broken glass. She learned that lesson the hard way in her early 20s when she gave her whole heart to Brent Calloway. Brent had been handsome in a loud, easy way, the kind of man who filled rooms with jokes and drank too much of everything: beer, attention, and Lila's patience. At first, his confidence felt like safety. Later, it felt like a cage. When he left, he didn't just walk away. He made sure to tell everyone that Lila had been the problem. Too soft, too emotional, not enough. The story spread faster than the truth ever could. So Lila rebuilt herself quietly. She moved from a cramped apartment in Ohio to a slower, gentler town in upstate New York, where brick sidewalks glowed amber in autumn and strangers smiled like they meant it. She found work designing floral displays for small events, discovered peace in early mornings, and learned that solitude could be kind. And then, one night that felt like any other, she met a man whose eyes held centuries and whose love would never bruise. Caleb Nightwell didn't court her loudly. He listened. He noticed the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, the way she hummed when arranging flowers, the way sadness sometimes crossed her face like a passing cloud. He arrived in an old black truck that smelled faintly of cedar, bringing her coffee before sunrise and wildflowers wrapped in twine, just because he said they reminded him of her strength. When he told her he loved her, it wasn't rushed or demanded. It was offered, reverent and sure. When he told her the truth about what he was, a vampire bound by old rules and older loyalties, he did so with fear in his voice, not pride. She loved him anyway. Marriage with Caleb was quiet and extraordinary all at once. He bought an estate on the edge of town, not for grandeur but for beauty, filling the grounds with endless rows of flowers Judy, Lila's favorite variety, because he liked how her eyes softened when she saw them. At night, he held her as if the world might try to steal her away. "I love you," he told her constantly, like a vow renewed with every breath. "I cherish you." And when she discovered she was pregnant, carrying a child who glowed faintly warm beneath her palm, Caleb wept like a man allowed to hope for the first time in centuries. That was why Lila sat alone at Magnolia Row on a cool autumn evening, waiting for her husband to arrive after tending to an urgent matter on the estate. The restaurant was intimate, candlelit, humming with soft jazz and the low murmur of conversations. Her hands rested over her stomach, still small, still their secret. She felt safe there, wrapped in warmth and anticipation, until the door opened and Brent Calloway walked in. Time folded cruelly. He looked older, sharper around the edges, but the smirk was the same. His gaze snagged on her like a thorn, lingering just long enough to hurt. He strolled over without invitation, eyes dropping to her midsection with open disdain. "Wow," he said, chuckling under his breath. "You got fat." The words landed, but they didn't shatter her the way they once would have. Lila inhaled slowly, reminding herself of the estate blooming under moonlight, of Caleb's hands steady on her back, of love that did not mock. She met Brent's eyes calmly, refusing to shrink. Around them, the air seemed to tighten, candles flickering as if disturbed by an unseen wind. Brent laughed again, louder this time, enjoying the moment. "Guess things didn't work out for you after all." If you've ever hated how people like Brent think cruelty is power, how they mistake mockery for strength, you already know why men like him thrive on silence. And if you believe bullies shouldn't get the last word, stay with this story. Only people who side with manipulation and arrogance would turn away now. Footsteps approached, unhurried and deliberate. Caleb moved through the restaurant like nightfall itself, tall and composed, his presence bending the room's attention without effort. He stopped behind Lila, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder, thumb brushing her collarbone in a gesture so tender it made her eyes sting. The shadows seemed to recognize him, settling obediently at his feet. "Is there a problem?" Caleb asked softly, his voice calm and dangerous all at once. "With my wife?" Brent's smile faltered as he noticed the wedding ring. The way Caleb's gaze glowed, faintly red in the candlelight, the unmistakable protectiveness in his stance. Lila leaned back into her husband, feeling his strength and devotion surround her like armor. "No," Brent muttered, suddenly unsure. "I was just, then you should leave," Caleb said, not raising his voice, not needing to. Brent did, his laughter gone, his confidence crumbling as quickly as it had been built. Lila exhaled, tears threatening, and Caleb kissed the crown of her head. "I love you," he murmured. "Always." In that moment, surrounded by flickering light and quiet wonder, Lila knew this was only the beginning, and that love, real love, always finds a way to win. The ride home from Magnolia Row was quiet, but it wasn't heavy. Lila watched the blur of amber streetlights slide across the windshield of Caleb's black truck, her hand resting in his thumb brushing slow, reassuring circles against her skin. The moment with Brent still echoed faintly in her chest, not as pain, but as something finally released, like an old bruise pressed one last time before it faded for good. "I'm sorry you had to see him," Caleb said after a while, his voice gentle, regret threaded through it. "I should have been there sooner." "You were exactly when I needed you," Lila replied softly. She turned toward him, studying the strong line of his jaw, the calm focus in his eyes. "Besides, he doesn't get to matter anymore. Not tonight. Not ever." Caleb glanced at her, a smile ghosting his lips. "I like the sound of that." When they reached the estate, the iron gates opened smoothly, revealing rows upon rows of flowers glowing silver beneath the moonlight. Judy blooms stretched endlessly, their petals pale and luminous, swaying as if greeting her. The sight still took her breath away every time. "You did all this for me," she whispered, stepping out of the truck. "For you," Caleb corrected gently, coming around to her side. "And for the life we're building." He knelt briefly, picking one perfect bloom and tucking it behind her ear. "You deserve to be reminded how beautiful you are, inside and out." Lila laughed softly, emotion rising like a tide. "You're impossible." "I've been called worse," he said, grinning. Inside the house, warmth wrapped around her. The estate wasn't ostentatious. It was intimate, filled with soft light, books, and the quiet sense of being cherished. Caleb helped her settle on the couch, placing a hand over her belly with reverence, as if greeting someone sacred. "Our son felt your emotions tonight," he said quietly. He stirred when that man spoke. Lila's heart clenched. "I don't want him to feel that kind of cruelty." "He won't," Caleb assured her. "Not with us. Not with love guiding him." He leaned closer, forehead resting against hers. "I love you, Lila May. I cherish you beyond centuries." She closed her eyes, breathing him in. "I love you too." Later that night, sleep came gently, but not without dreams. Lila dreamed of standing in the restaurant again, candles flickering wildly, shadows stretching long. This time, she wasn't alone. She stood taller, stronger, her child glowing with quiet power inside her, while Brent's voice faded into nothing. She woke with Caleb's arms around her, the dream already dissolving into confidence. Days passed and autumn deepened. Lila returned to her floral work, her belly rounding slowly, beautifully. Caleb showed up every morning in his truck, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with nothing but a kiss and the words she never tired of hearing. "I love you. I cherish you." He said them like promises he renewed daily. But Brent hadn't disappeared from the world, only from her life. And that difference unsettled him. She noticed the first whisper when an old acquaintance messaged her, asking if she was okay after hearing things. Then another, and another. Rumors Brent had once spread were resurfacing, twisted anew. That she was unstable, that she'd trapped some man with a pregnancy, that she'd let herself go because no one truly wanted her. It would have crushed her once. Now, it only hardened her resolve. One afternoon, as she arranged flowers for a small charity event, Brent appeared again, leaning against the doorway like he belonged there. "Heard you married rich," he sneered. Guess pretending worked out. Lila set the flowers down carefully and met his gaze, calm and unflinching. "You should leave." "Why?" he pressed, enjoying himself. "Afraid people will find out who you really are?" If you've ever seen someone like Brent twist lies into weapons and thought, this is why people stay silent. This is why cruelty survives. This is your moment. If you believe manipulators don't deserve power, comment everyone deserves respect. Only bullies and their defenders stay quiet. Caleb appeared behind her without a sound. "Careful," he said mildly. "You're mistaking patience for permission." Brent scoffed, but his eyes flicked nervously. "You don't scare me." Caleb smiled then, just slightly. "I don't need to." Security escorted Brent out, his protests hollow. Lila exhaled, hands trembling only after he was gone. Caleb pulled her into his arms, grounding her. "He doesn't get to rewrite your story," Caleb murmured. "Not anymore." That night, under the moonlit flowers, Lila felt it clearly. The past had lost its grip. Love had won ground, and something powerful, something destined, was growing, protected by devotion fierce enough to last forever. The first frost came early that year, silvering the edges of the Judy fields and turning the mornings crisp enough to sting Lila's cheeks when she stepped outside. She stood on the porch wrapped in one of Caleb's coats, the sleeves too long, the fabric carrying his scent, cedar, night air, and something old and steady that always made her feel safe. One hand rested on her belly, now unmistakably rounded. The other cradled a mug of warm milk he'd insisted she drink instead of coffee. Caleb watched her from the gravel drive, loading crates of flowers into the back of his truck. He wore a simple Henley, sleeves pushed up, dark hair tied back at the nape of his neck. The sight of him still made her chest ache in the best way. Centuries old or not, he moved with a quiet joy these days, like a man who had finally found his place in the world. "Cold," he called gently. "Perfect," she replied, smiling. He crossed the distance between them in long strides, setting the last crate down before pulling her into his arms. He pressed a kiss to her temple, then lower, to her cheek, then to her lips, slow, reverent, unhurried. "I love you," he said, as naturally as breathing. "I cherish you." Lila leaned into him, her voice soft but certain. "I feel it. Every day." Inside her, the baby stirred, a flutter that felt stronger than before, like a tiny pulse of awareness. Caleb froze, eyes widening as he placed his palm over her stomach. A faint warmth spread beneath his touch, not unpleasant, just alive. "He's growing stronger," Caleb murmured, threading his voice. "The elders warned me this would happen sooner than expected." Lila studied his face. "Warned you how?" Caleb hesitated, then guided her back inside, settling her on the couch before kneeling in front of her. His hand stayed gentle, grounding. "Our son won't just inherit my immortality. He'll feel emotions more intensely. Love will strengthen him. Cruelty, especially directed at you, could awaken instincts before he's ready." Her thoughts immediately leapt to Brent. The rumors, the confrontations, the way bitterness followed him like a shadow. "So, people like my ex?" "Yes," Caleb said quietly. "Men like him. If you've ever noticed how toxic people can't stand seeing others heal, how they circle happiness like predators, ask yourself this. Why do they fear joy so much? And if you believe that kind of cruelty should never win, hit like and subscribe. Only manipulators and their defenders root against love. The warning proved timely. 2 days later, the charity gala Lila had been preparing flowers for finally arrived. It was held at a renovated historic hall in town, all glass and warm lights, the kind of place that made small-town elegance feel grand. Caleb insisted on attending with her, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that made more than a few heads turn. He stayed close, one arm always at her waist, a silent promise of protection. At first, everything was perfect. Then the whispers started. Lila felt them before she heard them. Eyes lingering too long, conversations pausing when she passed. A woman she barely knew offered a tight smile and said, "Congratulations. I hear things moved fast for you." Moved fast. That was Brent's voice hiding in someone else's mouth. Caleb felt the shift instantly. His jaw tightened, though his tone remained calm. "Do you want to leave?" "No," Lila said, lifting her chin. "I'm tired of running from lies." They found Brent near the bar, laughing too loudly, already half a drink too deep. He looked smug, satisfied, like a man who believed he was winning a game only he understood. "Well, if it isn't the happy couple," Brent drawled when he spotted them. "Heard you've been telling people I'm the bad guy, Lila." She stepped forward before Caleb could speak. "You did that yourself." Brent's eyes flicked to her stomach. "Funny how you play the victim now." But he doesn't even know the truth. Silence fell around them, sharp and heavy. Caleb moved then, not aggressively, but decisively, placing himself slightly in front of Lila, his hand finding hers. "You've said enough." Brent laughed. "Or what? You'll scare me with your little red eye trick again." That was when it happened. The lights flickered violently. Glass rattled. A low hum filled the room, like the building itself was holding its breath. Lila gasped as warmth surged through her, protective and fierce. Caleb swore softly under his breath, pulling her close. "Our son," he whispered. "He feels threatened." Brent stumbled back, face draining of color. For the first time, fear replaced arrogance. "What the hell is this?" "This," Caleb said coldly, eyes glowing without apology, "is what happens when you push too far." Security rushed in as chaos erupted, guests murmuring, alarms chirping. Brent was escorted out, shouting protests no one listened to anymore. The room slowly settled, but something fundamental had shifted. Later that night, under the stars and the endless fields of Judy flowers, Caleb knelt before Lila, pressing his forehead to her belly. "I'm sorry," he said hoarsely. "I never wanted you exposed to that." She lifted his face, her eyes shining with love and resolve. "I'm not afraid. Not anymore. We're stronger than him. Stronger than lies." Caleb smiled, reverent and proud. "You're incredible." As the moon rose higher, Lila knew one truth with absolute clarity. The world could try to test them, but love, real love, was already winning. And Brent? He was about to learn what happens when cruelty meets destiny. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves, quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. The morning after the gala, Lila woke to sunlight spilling through gauzy curtains and Caleb's arm draped protectively over her waist. For a moment, she let herself stay there, listening to the steady rhythm of his breath, the calm certainty of his presence. Whatever the world had tried to throw at them the night before, this peace was real. Caleb stirred, his eyes opening slowly. He smiled the instant he saw her awake. "Good morning, my love." She traced the line of his jaw with her fingertips. "Good morning." He kissed her palm, then her belly, reverent as ever. "How do you feel?" "Strong," she said honestly. "Stronger than I expected." Caleb exhaled, relief softening his features. "So do I." But strength, Lila would learn, often invites a final test. By noon, her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from townspeople. Apologies. Awkward explanations. Screenshots. Someone had finally spoken up at the gala. One of Brent's former friends, emboldened by the chaos, admitting aloud that Brent had been spreading lies for years. Others followed. The story flipped, not dramatically, but decisively. The town, small as it was, had a way of correcting itself once the truth surfaced. Brent Calloway's name became synonymous with what people were tired of: bitterness, manipulation, cruelty disguised as humor. Still, Lila felt a knot in her chest she couldn't quite loosen. Caleb noticed. He always did. That evening, he drove her out past the edge of the estate, farther than they usually went, the truck humming along a narrow road bordered by trees, stripped nearly bare by autumn. "I want to show you something," he said. They arrived at a hill overlooking the valley, the entire town visible below, lights beginning to glow as dusk settled. Caleb helped her out of the truck, spreading a blanket he'd brought without comment. He handed her a bouquet, Judy flowers, of course, mixed with wild blooms. "I bring you flowers in a truck," he said softly, "because I never want you to forget that love doesn't have to be fancy to be real. It just has to be chosen." Lila's eyes filled. "You always choose me." "Every day," he said, "for as long as I exist." They sat together, watching the horizon darken. "This is where it ends," Caleb continued quietly. "Not with fear. Not with him. Tonight, we take back the last piece of power he thinks he has." She turned to him. "What do you mean?" Caleb met her gaze, unwavering. "Brent thrives on attention, on being seen. Tomorrow, he won't be." The next day, the truth went public, not through gossip, but through consequence. A formal complaint, recorded messages, witness statements. Brent's employer, already wary of his behavior, let him go. The bar he frequented stopped welcoming him. Invitations dried up. Smiles turned away. It wasn't dramatic revenge. It was something far worse for a man like Brent. It was irrelevance. Lila heard about it secondhand while arranging flowers at a community event. She felt nothing. No triumph. No bitterness. Just release. If you've ever watched someone toxic lose power simply because people stopped enabling them, you know how rare and satisfying that justice is. If you believe manipulators deserve consequences, common truth always wins. Only people who side with cruelty stay silent. That night, Caleb surprised her again. He drove her through the estate gates, but instead of stopping at the house, he kept going down a path she hadn't noticed before. The trees opened onto a vast, newly landscaped section of land. Her breath caught. Rows upon rows of Judy flowers stretched as far as she could see, illuminated by soft lights. In the center stood a small white pavilion, delicate and elegant. "What is this?" she whispered. Caleb took her hands. "This is ours. A place for you to create, to heal, to grow. I want you to build whatever you dream of here. Your business, your sanctuary. I bought the land so you'd never feel small again." Tears streamed freely now. "You did all this for me. For you," he said, "and for the woman you're becoming. For the mother you already are." He knelt then, pressing a kiss to her belly. A warmth bloomed beneath his lips, steady and calm. Their son responded gently. No surge of fear this time, only peace. Lila laughed through her tears. "He feels happy." Caleb smiled, eyes shining. "He feels loved." Weeks passed. Winter settled in softly. Lila's world grew quieter, sweeter. Brent faded into a cautionary tale people stopped telling. And one snowy evening, surrounded by flowers and firelight, Lila went into labor. Caleb never left her side. When their son finally arrived, the room glowed, not frightening, not otherworldly, just warm, like sunrise after a long night. Caleb wept openly, holding both mother and child as if anchoring himself to the present. "He's perfect," Lila whispered. "Yes," Caleb said, voice thick with awe. "He is." Years later, when people asked Lila about her life, she never mentioned Brent. She talked about love, about choosing kindness, about a man who brought her flowers in a truck and built her in a state of blooms to remind her she was always enough. And if there was one truth she carried forward, it was this: cruelty shouts. Love endures. And love, real love, always wins. As the snow settled softly over the estate, Judy blooms peeking delicately through the frost. Lila stood with Caleb and their son in the middle of the pavilion he had built for her. The warm glow of lanterns reflected in the tiny child's eyes, wide and curious, as he reached for a flower, giggling. Lila wrapped her arms around Caleb, feeling the pulse of life and love that had triumphed over cruelty, over lies, over fear. She realized then that every insult, every attempt to diminish her, had been nothing compared to what they had built together, a life full of devotion, safety, and joy. And she thought of Brent, how small and irrelevant his venom had become in the face of such genuine love. The world had tried to test her, to see if she would crumble, if she would allow the shadows of someone else's bitterness to define her worth. But she hadn't. She had chosen love. She had chosen truth. And the consequence was not revenge in its loudest form, but something far more profound: freedom, respect, and unshakable joy. If you've ever been in Lila's shoes, mocked, belittled, underestimated, or hurt by someone who thought their words could define your life, you know how hollow their power is. It only lasts as long as we allow it. And if you believe that no one deserves to be humiliated, belittled, or dismissed, stand with her now. Comment, "I choose love and truth," if you refuse to let cruelty define your story. Only those who side with negativity, gossip, or manipulation will stay silent. Think about it. How many times have we allowed someone else's bitterness to overshadow our joy? How many times have we given our energy to those who thrive on our fear, our shame, or our insecurities? Lila's story isn't just about love. It's about resilience, about reclaiming your own narrative, about choosing a life filled with care, kindness, and protection. Hit like if you believe love is stronger than cruelty, and subscribe to follow stories where the good always triumphs, where kindness endures, and where every heart that has been broken can find a home again. And share in the comments if you've ever felt underestimated by someone who thought they could hold power over you. Let them see that their influence is gone, replaced by your own courage. Remember this: cruelty shouts, but love whispers. Love endures. Love heals. Love creates worlds where laughter grows, where families flourish, and where hearts, like Lila's, Caleb's, and their sons, can finally rest safely. If you're reading this, know that your story matters, your resilience matters, and the love you give and receive matters infinitely more than any insult or attempt to diminish you. So today, choose love. Protect it. Celebrate it. And never let someone else's bitterness dictate your worth or your joy. Comment below, "I stand for love and truth," if you refuse to let the darkness of someone else define your light. Only those who continue to nurture cruelty and falsehoods will stay silent. Everyone else knows that love is always worth it, and that every heart deserves to be cherished. Because in the end, as Lila learned, life isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving to yourself that love, courage, and devotion can conquer everything, even the shadows of the past. And when you embrace that truth, you create a life that no negativity, no mockery, and no bitterness can ever touch. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. It really means a lot that you spent some time here with me today. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, drop a comment, or share it with someone who might enjoy it too. And don't forget to follow/subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. I love hearing from you, so let me know your thoughts, questions, or just say hi in the comments. Thanks again. You're the reason I do this, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.